When you work at a 911 call center, you learn to deal with all kinds of situations. On normal days, you answer calls about traffic accidents, medical emergencies, or just wrong numbers. But there are also days that are anything but normal. Days where you hear screams, the fear in the voices, and stories that never leave your mind. September 26, 2014 was one of those days. When the first call from Kin Louderer came in that morning, I didn't think much of it. The words, "Emergency," appeared on the screen, and I answered in my familiar professional voice. "Hello, 911, how can I help you?" There was a pause for a few seconds, and then I heard a weak, trembling voice. Kin's voice trembled, laced with panic as she spoke of a fight in the apartment complex's clubhouse. Her words came out so fast it was hard to keep up, as if she feared that if she didn't speak fast enough, things would get worse. She insisted that she had heard gunshots. I immediately asked for more details to verify the severity of the situation. Were there any visible weapons? Was anyone hurt? Kin answered quickly but indistinctly, her voice laced with fear and tension. When police arrived on the scene, they found no signs of a struggle. Instead, the clubhouse was hosting a wedding reception with loud music and laughter echoing. After speaking with guests, one admitted that he had set off fireworks in celebration, an unintentional act that Kin may have mistaken for gunfire. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Just a few hours later, Kin called again, this time without saying anything and hanging up before I could pick up. The unsettling feeling was too much to ignore, so we called back to check. When she answered, her voice was not the same. It was broken, disjointed, and incoherent. I struggled to understand what she was trying to convey. When I pressed for more details, she confessed that her roommates had expressed concerns about her behavior. They said she was acting strangely, even talking to herself at times. Kin didn't deny it, but she seemed unable to explain what was going on. She just kept repeating that. Things aren't right. And that. Something isn't right. I took the information calmly, trying to calm her down. I reminded her to stay calm, that everything would be okay. But when I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that was creeping up inside me. There was something about the way she spoke, the uncertainty in her voice, the sense that she was lost in a fog of reality that made me wonder if this was just the beginning of something bigger. Sometimes, calls like this make me feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, wondering if I can pull someone up or just watch them slide into darkness. With Kin, I couldn't shake the feeling that the cliff was widening by the hour, by the minute. That morning, around 8, my phone rang, and I recognized Kin's name on the screen. My heart sank, because even though I didn't want to admit it, I had grown accustomed to her calls carrying the same relentless tension. But this time, her voice was different. It was sharp, broken, and desperate. "Someone broke into my apartment," Kin said, her voice breaking as she tried to hold on to her last shred of control. The words left me momentarily confused, but I quickly regained my composure and asked for her address. She repeated her address, each word clinging to a fading reality. "They're stealing my stuff," she said, her breath ragged and ragged. I tried to keep my voice steady, asking, "Did you see anyone? What did they look like?" "I didn't see anyone," she replied, her voice shaking. "But I heard noises, footsteps, someone moving things." I continued to ask questions to gather more information, but Kin's answers became more and more inconsistent. She started talking about the figure she saw outside her window the night before, then moved on to someone standing at her door in the early hours of the morning. The panic in her words worried me, but what really made me nervous was her tone. It wasn't just panic, it was absolute, almost unbearable fear. Kin's roommate, Carol, walked into the room during the call. I heard her say through the phone, "There's no one in the apartment, Kin. All the doors are locked." Carol's voice was firm and calm, but it only seemed to increase Kin's unease. Kin screamed, almost in tears, "They're here! I know they're here! I can hear them!" I tried to intervene, telling Kin to take a deep breath and calm down, but she wouldn't listen. Her panic seemed to be building to the point where she started talking nonstop, her words a torrent of uncontrollable words. In that moment, I felt helpless. Even though I had handled hundreds of stressful situations, something about Kin and her fear made me feel like there was nothing I could do to help. Not because I lacked the tools or the knowledge, but because I felt like what Kin was going through was beyond anyone's reach. The call ended when Kin, in a moment of panic, said she would check the apartment herself. Carol tried to stop her, but Kin's voice was surprisingly firm. "I have to do something," she said, and the line went dead. It was a moment I knew I would never forget. Kin's voice, her fear, and the absolute helplessness I felt at not being able to do anything to help her. It wasn't just a call, it was a scar forever etched in my mind. No, it can't be. The police were called to Kin's apartment again. For the third time in just a few weeks. They checked every corner, every lock and window frame, listened to Kin's terrified explanations. But, like before, nothing suspicious was found. Everything was intact. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence that anyone other than Kin and her roommate had been there. Everything seemed fine, at least from a physical standpoint. But that stability was only superficial. In my mind, and perhaps Kin's, things were sliding into an uncontrollable chaos. That afternoon, it was raining heavily, each cold drop of rain pouring down like an ominous sign. Around 4 p.m., a neighbor saw Kin walking barefoot along the road outside the apartment complex. She was holding her small dog, her hair was soaked from the rain, and her eyes were full of confusion. The neighbor said that Kin looked around anxiously, as if she was being chased by someone or something invisible. The scene sent a chill down my spine when I heard the police report. Something was very wrong with Kin, but I couldn't figure out what it was, nor did I know how to stop it. The security camera in the apartment complex recorded Kin returning to her apartment afterwards. Her demeanor was hurried and unstable, like someone torn between fear and the will to survive. She hugged the dog tightly to her chest, running down the hall with her head down, as if to avoid the curious eyes around her. But that was the last time the camera recorded her image. Just a few hours later, Kin disappeared. Without a trace, without an explanation. Kin's disappearance opened up a series of unanswered questions, along with a feeling of helplessness and guilt that could not be extinguished. I remembered her voice on the phone, a cry for help mixed with panic and pain. Had I missed something? Was there some way, some opportunity that I had not seen to help her? But all those questions were now just an empty echo in my mind. Kin was gone, taking with her the secrets and fears she could not share with anyone. When Kin's body was found 2.5 months later in a creek, I felt a strange shock wash over me. It wasn't just the usual sadness, but a mixture of helplessness, regret, and endless questions echoing in my head. I didn't know what to feel. As someone who had listened to her final phone calls, I couldn't help but ask myself, what could I have done differently to prevent this tragic outcome? The police said Kin's body was so decomposed that the exact cause of death could not be determined. There were no obvious signs of violence, but nothing to completely rule out the possibility of outside intervention. The forensic report only made things more confusing. While her family has consistently insisted that there was something fishy behind Kin's passing, no convincing evidence has emerged to support this theory. In the days after her body was found, the public was abuzz with theories. Some believed that Kin had suffered a profound mental breakdown, leading her to fall into a state of disorientation and despair. Others spoke of the possibility that she was being stalked or threatened by whatever force she had alluded to in her terrifying phone calls. Some even questioned her surroundings. Could neighbors or acquaintances have intervened in Kin's life in unexpected ways? Kin's family, in pain and confusion, searched for answers. They hired private investigators, scoured the smallest of clues, but all led to dead ends. Kin Lauderer's close friends described her as intelligent, sensitive, but also vulnerable. She had shared her concerns about being followed, but no one expected it to lead to such a tragedy. I still remember her voice clearly during her final phone calls. It was not just the voice of a panicked person, but also the desperate cry for help from a suppressed soul. Her words, the details that mixed reality and fantasy, all now seem like pieces of a puzzle that I can never complete. Kin's passing leaves an unfillable void, not only for her family and friends, but for everyone who had the opportunity to come into contact with her story. She is not just a victim, but a symbol of a heartbreaking mystery about how we understand and support those who are struggling with the darkness in their own minds. I have heard thousands of calls in my career, from tearful emergency calls to calm pleas for help in the most dire of moments. Each one has left its mark, but Kin Lauderer's was different. The way she spoke, the panic and desperation in her voice, as if each word was an attempt to hold on to hope. I remember feeling suffocated as I listened to her pleas, as if I too was caught in the storm she was fighting. Her words were not just sounds, but a vivid scene, full of tension and mystery. I could feel the fear in each word, the helplessness as she tried to express something that perhaps even she herself could not comprehend. It wasn't just a regular emergency call. It was like a cry for help from somewhere I couldn't reach, a glimmer of something between reality and some nightmare. The sense of helplessness, that we couldn't do anything to help her, haunted me. We had done everything we could according to protocol, but it wasn't enough. Maybe Kin needed more an intervention that went beyond the norm, an alertness that saw the signs we'd missed. I wondered if there was a moment in that call that I hadn't noticed, a clue that had been overlooked, or simply something I could have said to reassure her. Every time I thought about her, I was tormented by the question, if I could have done something differently, would things have ended up like this? I knew I couldn't change the past, but the thought weighed heavily on my mind. It's not just a sense of failure, but also a sense of regret that a life was cut short so soon, so mysteriously, and so painfully. There are nights when I lie awake, thinking about Kin and trying to piece together her story, hoping that I might find an explanation, an answer, or at least some comfort. But all that leaves is silence, a huge void that can't be filled. Her story is not just a mystery, but also a harsh lesson about human limitations, about what we can do, and what we can't change, no matter how hard we try. I'm John Lindquist. I took over for Dale Cater that morning, the morning of September 12, 1987. And I think a part of me has been missing with him since that moment. Dale was the kind of guy you never paid much attention to. No noise, no trouble. A quiet man in his 50s, he worked as a security guard and weekend maintenance man at the Corning Glass Works in Bradford, Pennsylvania. He had shown up for work the night before, at 11 a.m. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. At 7 a.m., I arrived for my shift. Dale was gone. Not his type. I figured he was probably resting in the cafeteria, his usual place at the end of his shift. But when I went in, there was only his lunchbox. Intact. The food was still there, as if it had never been opened. I started to feel a chill down my spine. Dale's truck sat untouched in the parking lot, a stark reminder of his disappearance. The doors were unlocked, something Dale, an obsessively cautious man, never did. Inside, everything was intact. The familiar backpack, the unopened pack of cigarettes, the car keys, and most strangely of all, an empty gun holster. Dale never left his gun unattended, especially in a factory where danger was always present. "My gun was an extension of myself," he once said. "It protected me, and I protected it." The disappearance of the gun left us all feeling not only strange, but deeply uneasy. We immediately called the police. An investigation team was deployed to the scene, with dogs searching for clues. The dogs quickly picked up the scent of Dale's car and, as expected, led the team to the second floor of the factory, an area Dale had rarely, if ever, set foot in. The second floor contained large furnaces and an area that held valuable platinum tubes. It was a sensitive, heavily guarded area, and there was no reason for Dale to be up there. The police were trying to figure out why Dale's trail had led there. The factory staff all claimed that no one had seen Dale on the second floor the day he disappeared. Security cameras in the area had also picked up nothing unusual, a near impossible feat. Since the cameras were always on, Dale's disappearance was further complicated by the fact that the investigation team had found some strange shoe prints, but they were indistinct, as if someone had deliberately erased the evidence. The furnace was still running normally, and the platinum tubes were intact, with no signs of tampering or theft. It all defied logic, leaving an uneasy feeling hanging over everyone involved in the investigation. "This can't be right," Eleanor muttered, standing outside the cordoned-off area. Dale would never have been up there. He knew the rules. And his gun? This never happened. Those little details, the unlocked car, the empty gun holster, the trail leading to the second floor, turned Dale's disappearance from a heartbreaking story into an unsolvable mystery. It all felt like it was staged, but by whom? And why? These questions kept swirling in our minds, making our fear grow stronger. Then we watched the security footage again. The footage was old, grainy and blurry, as if time had deliberately erased important details. But no matter how blurry, the figure of the masked man was still clearly visible, each step careful and slow. He moved through the factory as if he knew every hallway, every corner by heart. His gait was unhurried, but full of purpose, making the viewer feel creepy. He walked through the dark corridors, the flashing lights reflecting on the smooth mask. When he reached the second floor, he stopped. The scene went silent for a few seconds. Then, from the darkness, Dale appeared. Dale stepped into the frame, his eyes flashing with surprise, but he did not show any resistance. The two men spoke, but not a sound was recorded. Everything was just silent and blurry images, as if the world was holding its breath to witness this moment. The masked man held out his hand, and Dale didn't hesitate. He followed him, but before he disappeared from the camera's view, Dale suddenly turned his head. His eyes looked straight into the camera, through the lens, as if he was trying to convey a message. No one could be sure what he meant by that look. Was it a silent cry for help, hoping that someone would come to rescue him? Or was it a farewell, full of regret but no way to turn back? Some believed that the look contained a challenge, as if Dale knew what was happening, knew what was coming, but he chose to remain silent. A mysterious silence, as if he was protecting something greater than himself. The scene stopped there, leaving a series of unanswered questions. Dale's relatives, when reviewing this video, all had different interpretations. Miss S. Eleanor insisted that the look was a cry for help. "He's waiting for us. We have to find him," she said through sobs. Sarah and Daniel, too young to understand, only saw that their father's eyes looked strangely sad. "Dad doesn't want to go, Mom," Sarah whispered to her mother. "He's sad." But strangers watching the video felt that look was cold, distant, as if Dale had accepted his fate, or even dared anyone to find out the truth. Dale disappeared with the masked man, and that final look became the biggest mystery of all. A haunting ellipsis, leaving behind scattered pieces that no one could put together. All we know is that night, a platinum tube worth nearly $250,000 disappeared. Along with Dale, a heavy bag was pulled out of the factory on a forklift. It could have been platinum, or it could have been Dale. He has never been seen since. Not a trace, not a phone call, not a note. Gone, as if he had never existed. Some say Dale was an accomplice, that he was desperate in debt, out of work, cut off from pay, disgusted with his boss, that he needed the money, and this was the only way. They said Dale knew where the supplies were, and that he might be the one to open the way. I don't know what to believe. I know Dale wasn't perfect. He had a bad attitude, yes, but he wasn't the type to do something like that. He loved his family. He loved laughter. He loved peace. If anyone had seen that masked man on the night shift, it would have been Dale because he was the only one there. Maybe he was just investigating. Maybe he was forced to cooperate. And maybe he was killed right away as an unwanted witness. But there was also a part of me wondering, why was Dale looking at the camera like that? Was he scared? Or was he saying, "Let me go"? Or, "Do you know better than all of us?" I've watched that video 100 times. Each time, I see something different. But the end result is the same. Dale Cater is gone. And I'm the last one to show up. The last one to see the rest. The cold lunchbox. The unattended car. The shadow in the video. And that look, it's stuck with me for years. I'm not sure what happened on the evening of September 12, 1987. In the months that followed, the Corning Glass Works factory was filled with a heavy silence. Dale's former co-workers, including me, wondered what had happened. We shared stories, theories, some plausible, some far-fetched, but they all led to the same blind spot. No one knew the truth. Dale disappeared without a trace, leaving an unfillable void in his small family. His devoted wife, Eleanor, lived in a mixture of fear and hope from the moment she realized her husband wasn't coming home. She was all over the newspapers, on television, her eyes dark from sleepless nights. She kept pleading, "If anyone knows anything, please tell me. We need him back." Eleanor refused to let herself fall. In public, she maintained a strong image. But when she returned to her empty house, the walls seemed to close in, squeezing her with loneliness. Pain seeped into every corner of the house, where every object reminded her of Dale, the coat he used to hang on the door, the cup of coffee he had not had time to drink on his last morning, and the books he had promised to read with his children. Dale's 2 children, Sarah and Daniel, were too young to understand what was happening. Sarah, 9, tried to be more assertive like her mother, but still cried when no one was looking. "Where is Daddy, Mummy? Is he coming back?" was a question Eleanor could not answer. Daniel, 5, played with toy cars in the corner of the room, sometimes whispering to himself as if he were talking to his father. One time, he pulled on his mother's shirt and whispered, Daddy is playing hide and seek with us, right? When he wins, he'll come out. Those innocent words made Eleanor cry, but she quickly wiped her tears away and hugged her son tightly. The family tried to maintain a normal life, but in reality, nothing was normal anymore. Dinners were no longer filled with Dale's laughter. Only the sound of knives and forks hitting plates in the stifling silence. Sarah didn't want to eat Dale's favorite food because it reminded her of the whole family meals. Daniel, in his innocence, always left a portion of food for his father, hoping that he would appear from somewhere. As time passed, the loss seemed to eat away at each member of the family. Eleanor began to dream of Dale in her fitful sleep. The dreams were always vague, but left a greater sense of loss when she woke up. Sarah, not wanting to see her mother sad, began to write letters to her father and hide them under her pillow. She believed that somehow her father would receive them. In one letter, she wrote, "Daddy, I miss you so much. I promise to be good and take care of Daniel. But Daddy, please, come home. Our house is so sad without you." Daniel, who kept Dale's hat by his bed, would put it on every night before going to sleep. He believed that this would help him dream of his father, and in his dreams, his father would tell him a new story. The Dale family had lost not only their breadwinner, but also a part of their soul. His disappearance was not only a mystery, but also a gnawing pain that ate away at them every day, every hour. But in the darkest moments, Eleanor never stopped hoping. She believed that somewhere Dale was still alive, and she would do everything in her power to bring him back. The police worked tirelessly for the first few weeks. They dug through files, scoured platinum transactions, and questioned everyone involved. But then the case went cold. There was no more evidence. There were no suspects other than the mysterious, masked man on the tape, and no trace of Dale. Years later, questions remained. Some claimed to have seen Dale in another state, living under a new identity. Others said he was forced to take part in the platinum heist and was murdered shortly afterward. But all that was just hearsay, mismatched pieces of an unsolved puzzle. I continued working at the factory for a few more years before retiring. But every time I passed the canteen and saw a lunchbox left somewhere, I would think of Dale and that look in the video. That look that still looked through me, asking me questions I could never answer. Just as no one knows what happened to Colin Louderer in 2014. Just that. Some people, when they are in the right place at the wrong time, will forever become part of the mystery.